One of the buzzwords or buzz phrases, technically, I suppose, that's been kicked around the halls of Parliament recently is social investment. That we need to invest in our society, and given some of the policy announcements, more about potholes and less about ambulances, but breaking down what social investment actually means, particularly with the interpretation of a government lens, perhaps. Thomas Scrimgeour from the Maxim Institute. Kia ora, good morning.
Thanks, Andrew. Glad to be here.
It does sound like a good thing, investing in our society, social investment. Who wouldn't go for social investment? But it probably means different things to different people.
Yeah, for sure. It's certainly one of these phrases that can be filled with a lot of different meaning depending on who's using it. So when the government is using it now, it really kind of is drawing back a legacy to Bill English's time as Minister of Finance and then ultimately Prime Minister. And he was trying to figure out like a framework to think about how can we spend money more efficiently. As a government, we have a whole bunch of different programs and priorities and things as a society we want to spend on, but it can be hard to choose between them. And so social investment hopes to be a way to figure that out. And typically the way they do that is in terms of future cost savings to government. The government collects a lot of data about people, and so you can do some interesting statistical stuff. If we invest money insulating houses for people who are in tough circumstances, we spend less money on hospital beds for people with respiratory illnesses. Mm-hmm. If we can rehabilitate prisoners, we don't have to spend money incarcerating them in the future. So basically, it's worth spending as much money as you would save in the future by investing early. And so that's kind of the idea behind social investment.
It's kind of like the fence at the top of the cliff, because fences are less expensive than ambulances, but we've circled back round to the whole who can afford ambulances at the moment thing here. But when it comes to that, it kind of does make sense to spend a little bit of money now so that you have to spend less money later, but that doesn't really fit in with the political cycles, because who's got the money? If you haven't got the money to spend now, then you're actually solving a problem which may or may not be your government's problem, and you may or may not be in power by the time that issue kicks in. So it's difficult, I suppose, to have this long-term thinking, spend money now to save money later, which makes sense for a long-term economic and social development point of view, but not necessarily when you've got such short political terms.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, I think in many ways, social investment comes to some quite obvious conclusions, right? We can all say fence at the top of a cliff,
yep.
And most people will get on board. What social investment tries to do is create some numbers to value what's the cost difference between the fence at the top of the cliff and the ambulance at the bottom. And the hope would be then, if you can show just how much more efficient the fence at the top of the cliff is, people are more likely to get on board. And then maybe we have a bit of stability across political cycles.
And I suppose the government really has set quite a tough report card for itself. These targets that need to be met within a relatively short period of time on some particularly big issues. Perhaps the biggest long-term issue, and you cover this in your article actually, the biggest long-term aspect of this comes with superannuation. And in long-term thinking, what we're setting aside today will help us in our retirement. But we've got this sort of age bubble working its way through the demograph, and changing any of the details on superannuation, that's a really effective strategy to lose the next election.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's superannuation is one of those issues that are what is often called a third rail issue. On a train track, the third rail is the one you touch and you die because you get electrocuted.
Yep.
And so it seems like a very difficult kind of program to adjust. But what I'm trying to unpack in the column is that social investment can be a real ideology, a real framework for thinking about how we deliver welfare,
yep.
Or it can just be a brand. And my argument is that if social investment has nothing to say about superannuation, it's just marketing. Superannuation is the single largest welfare program we run in the country. It's nearly 50% of all welfare spending is superannuation. It's in the high 40s.
Yeah.
And so if social investment can't analyze superannuation and raise questions about how we deliver that, then really there's nothing to it at all.
I suppose the issue is that, as you say, it's half of government spending when it comes to beneficiary work, and it is arguable, in fact, reasonably self-evident, that some of the people that receive all of that money don't really need it. Whereas for people who are homeless and desperate for food parcels and all of those sorts of things, there's no resources in that part of the equation. It seems like the social investment concept is there, but there's also a little bit of a sacred cow in the mix that we can't really use that money to bring equity and balance into our society.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, superannuation, goes to some people who really need it, and it goes to a lot of people who are actually financially comfortable. And I don't begrudge anyone taking the superannuation when it's offered. That's the program that exists. And I don't think we need to moralize that question. But if the government is to say, is this the most effective way we can spend money to help those who are needy? I think it would be hard to say that superannuation really is that program. And to give it like a sense of scale of superannuation, you'll remember earlier in the year we discussed $5 co-payments on prescriptions, right? There was a big news cycle. Through the course of writing this article this week, I kind of was comparing the value, and I was quite pleased to find that it was not just close to, but it was exactly 1/1000th of the difference.
Wow.
Superannuation is $23.2 billion a year. The $5 copayment on prescription is expected to bring in $23.2 million a year. And so we have these big arguments about what are relatively small elements of government spending, prescription copayments, and we ignore the big $23.2 billion elephant in the room, superannuation.
Yeah, literally 0.1% in that regard there. Part of the issue here, I suppose, is whenever you change this, if a government has the social capital to be able to make changes on this scale, it's going to be markedly unfair on the people who are directly affected by it. And, hey, maybe it will work out over time. But those people that if you're changing the retirement age, for example, that directly affects the people who are just about to retire disproportionately to the rest of us, and they're going to be pretty cross about it.
Yeah, for sure. And so often when we think about superannuation reform and retirement ages, often we look at it with really long lead-in times, because, as you say, it'd be quite unfair to pull the rug out from under a 64-year-old that suddenly the system's changed.
Yeah.
And so that really makes a lot of sense. The challenge is that means the government of the day can always push it out because the effects won't be felt for years to come. So it's kind of this wicked problem in that sense.
Yeah.
We don't want to act too quickly, but we also, if we don't act quickly in short time frames, then we can just bump it out ever further.
Or either that or be bullied in question time in Parliament to say, absolutely, I will not be changing the retirement age under my watch. That's absolutely not going to happen, or I'll retire and then just get kicked into touch for the next cycle, right?
Yeah, for sure. I think retirement ages is one of these classic probably misdirections when thinking about something like superannuation.
Yeah.
You and I, Andrew, both have what I'll call not real jobs, in that we can both do them for a long time. Our bodies are not destroyed by the process of working at laptops or at microphones.
Yeah.
But, I was a landscaper for a little bit. I had to shovel rocks. I wouldn't be able to shovel rocks at the age of 65 and keep working into my 70s. And so there really is a class difference or work difference among people, but how late can you work at the job you have? And so just raising the retirement age will hurt some people really badly whose jobs just can't be done well into your 60s. And some people will carry on just fine. And so we need better tools to think about it than just age.
And as you all know from first-hand experience, laptop jobs tend to pay slightly better than rock shoveling jobs generally. And so those people are actually less in desperate need of the retirement income at 65 perhaps. Although all generalizations are false, including that one. Hey, Thomas, appreciate your wisdom and insight on this matter. The article is going to be posted on the Maxim website a little bit later this week, I understand. Thanks so much for bringing up the topic. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me, Andrew.
Hey, thanks very much for joining us in the Rhema studio. Thanks very much for watching the interview. It's kind of nice to have an audience, actually. And if you did like what you watched, then do give us a like, do give us the thumbs up. And if you'd like to see more interviews like that one, or perhaps even better, subscribe and those interviews will come straight to you. Don't forget to turn on your notifications, and we'll see you in the next one. Cheers.